Cactus Flower, Cactus Flower, 1969. One lie creates an entire movie. Cactus Flower, like I said, it's a 1969 romantic comedy starring Walter Matthau, Ingrid Bergman from, here's talking to you, kid, Casablanca, and a very young, very young Goldie Hawn. I think this is one of her first movies. And this was a gem that I didn't even know existed. The movie actually begins on a surprisingly dark note. Goldie Hawn plays Tony, a young woman who attempts suicide. Unfortunately, she's discovered and saved by the next door neighbor, Igor, of all names. Right? You gotta love the name Igor. He didn't have a hunchback, though, so don't worry about that. He's actually a pretty good looking guy. And the reason behind all of these movies, Tony's boyfriend, Julian, the reason behind she's trying to commit suicide is because Julian, played by Walter Matthau, basically told her that he was married. Julian is a dentist who has a problem with commitment. He doesn't want to get married. So rather than simply telling Tony that, he comes up with a solution that I'm sure sounded brilliant at the time. Maybe not. He tells her he's already married, but he's not. And that one little lie is basically the premise for the whole movie. Tony's suicide attempt, Julian realizes how much she means to him and decides that he actually does want to marry her. Problem to solve. Well, not quite, because Tony is a genuinely, can't pronounce the word. She really cares about people, right? She's a sensitive person. She doesn't want her happiness to come at the expense of another woman. Before she can marry Julian, she needs to know that his wife is okay with the divorce, which is kind of hilarious on itself. In fact, Tony wants to meet her. That's a little difficult when, you don't really have a wife that exists. So now Julian has to find a fake wife. Enter Stephanie. Stephanie is Julian's nurse, played by the great Ingrid Bergman. And Julian convinces her to pretend to be his wife. He's supposedly divorcing. And this is where the movie really gets going, because Tony doesn't simply want to hear that Stephanie's okay to the divorce. She becomes concerned that Stephanie's entire future. Julian is supposedly such a wonderful man that Tony wants to make sure that Stephanie isn't giving up for some bum. So now Tony wants to meet Stephanie's new boyfriend. There's only one problem with that. Stephanie doesn't have one. So now Julian has to come up with a fake boyfriend for his fake wife. And every time Julian tries to fix his original lie, he has to create another lie to support it. Then another and another and another. You know how lies go. Eventually you got people pretending to be married, pretending to be divorced, pretending to be dating, and trying to remember what everybody else is supposed to be and to believe. And that's where Cactus Flower really becomes funny. There's one really good sequence of the movie where Tony meets Stephanie and her supposed boyfriend. The problem is the fake boyfriend's real girlfriend shows up. So, of course, now Goldie Hawn believes that Stephanie's boyfriend is cheating on her, so she feels bad about that, and she disapproves of the boyfriend. So she has spent all this time worrying about Julian's poor wife, and she's not about to let Stephanie leave one supposedly wonderful man for somebody who's going to cheat on her. And because Julian couldn't simply admit that he was single, but the highlight of the movie comes much later on, when practically everybody ends up in the same nightclub because they didn't think anybody else that they knew would be at this nightclub. Stephanie arrives with another man. The fake boyfriend arrives. Igor arrives, and suddenly every lie and misunderstanding the movie has been building starts crashing into every lie and misunderstanding. Julian becomes jealous because Stephanie is suddenly receiving attention from other men, and Tony starts getting jealous too because she's beginning to have feelings for her neighbor Igor, although she doesn't really want to admit it yet. At the same time, Tony has spent so much of the movie feeling sorry for Stephanie. She thought the poor woman was having trouble moving on from Julian. Now at the nightclub, there's 3 or 4 guys liking Stephanie, and she's practically surrounded by men. Tony finally decides that Stephanie isn't some poor, miserable, abandoned wife after all. She's a barracuda, and probably the funniest stretch of the movie. And what really makes it all this work is the cast. Walter Matthau is great as Julian. He's more responsible for the entire disaster, and watching him desperately trying to maintain all these lies is a lot of fun. Ingrid Bergman is also excellent as Stephanie. She starts as Julian's rather reserved and dependable nurse, but as the movie continues, she begins loosening up, enjoying herself, and realizing that other men are interested in her. Then you have Goldie Hawn, and this is what really impressed me, is at this point you essentially have two established stars in Hollywood, Walter Matthau and Ingrid Bergman, and Goldie Hawn's right there being a newbie actress, holding her own against them. In fact, she actually wins the award for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress, and I don't know what competition she was up against, but she is really great in this movie. She drives a huge amount of the plot. If Tony wants to meet, it's Tony who wants to meet the wife. It's Tony who needs to know that Stephanie wants to divorce. It's Tony who becomes concerned about Stephanie's new boyfriend. And Tony's caring personality, oh my back, is responsible for making Julian's original lie more and more complicated. Hawn as the charm, comic timing, and screen presence that would eventually make her a major star. You can see it all right here in Cactus Flower. And although the movie creates this increasingly complicated web of relationships, there's one thing that's particularly difficult to figure out. Within probably the first 15 to 20 minutes, you already know how it's going to end. You're just there for the ride to see how they get to that conclusion. These people, and basically the moral of the story is don't lie. Especially don't tell your girlfriend that you have an imaginary wife, because before long you're going to need an imaginary divorce, imaginary children, imaginary boyfriend, and your imaginary wife's boyfriend. And eventually the movie is with a nice little exchange at the end. After everything has finally been revealed and relationships have fallen where you knew they were going to fall, Julian says to Stephanie, "I think I'm going to kiss you." And she says, "When will you?" And it's not quite the Casablanca type of ending, but it's pretty close. Almost up there with as was it as good as it gets. Anyways, Cactus Flower was a joy to watch. If you're at the end of the movie and you haven't seen Cactus Flower yet, check it out. If you ever get the opportunity. Anyways, have you seen Cactus Flower? If you did you like it? Did you not like it? Let me know in the comments below. And until next time, adios.